Today's session is about how emerging technologies are reshaping culture. And we've got Caroline White, who's the Business Development Manager from which is Birmingham Open Media, also fantastic Culture Central members. We sort of really just thought that this was a really pertinent time with all of the things that are happening in the region around creative industries, technology, and that this was a really good time to find out all of the things that are happening and understand the opportunities for culture through immersive tech as well. So just a little bit about Caroline. Caroline's a business development manager and creative producer who works at the intersection of culture, heritage and immersive technology. So she's helped turn stories and collections into engaging audience experiences while securing the funding and partnerships to deliver them. So supported hundreds of creative businesses through programmes led by Digital Catapult even, Innovate UK, XRStories, MediaCity, Production Park and more, and also delivered immersive projects for clients such as the Science Museum Group, Edinburgh Fringe and Electric Side, with a specific focus on deepening engagement and connecting audiences with culture in meaningful ways. So we're really looking for this session to spotlight some of the opportunities to engage audience in new ways, explore hidden stories and unlock culture for everyone. And I'm just going to hand straight over to Caroline. But like I say, if we can leave questions until either in the chat or at the end, that would be fantastic. Caroline, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to meet you all. Thanks for the intro. So hopefully today is going to be interesting. It is not a talk about technology per se, but more a talk about some of the things that we see at BOM and some of the opportunities, hopefully, that you can take hold of as well. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see that okay? Yeah. So how technologies are reshaping culture. I don't know how many of you are using technology already, or maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But really today is more about interaction, and I would really call it more interaction than anything else about how audiences are engaging in new ways. So bear with me, I'm just going to share my screen. Sorry, let me go back. So what we're going to talk about today is sort of why now? Like there's a lot of noise at the moment, isn't there, around AI and what we should be doing. And it's really challenging as well at the moment for cultural organisations with regards to funding. But there's also a lot of opportunity. So hopefully I can share a little bit of light on some of that stuff. What next? So it might be what's next for you, but also some things we see changing and happening and maybe coming up in the future. And we'll be talking about some amazing projects that are around the Midlands that are working really well. And why not? So some really tangible things that you can take a look at and get involved in if you are interested in knowing more. So a little bit about BOM. So we really do three main things. So how many of you, I can see lots of familiar faces. Is there anyone who's never heard of BOM before? Just nod your head or, yeah, okay. So we're based right in the heart of Birmingham. We've been around for 11 years and we're an immersive arts organisation. So we're a cultural organisation ourselves. We're an Arts Council NPO. And we, as I say, we do three things. So one thing is we create our own experiences, and that can include everything from live to interactive things for museums, to games, to VR experiences. And don't worry if you don't necessarily know what all those things are. But we've definitely sort of ridden the wave of technologies as they changed. We're always sort of on that edge of new technologies and always exploring them and seeing how they can help, how they can make things better, and how we can really change the voice as well and make them more available to more people. The second thing we do is we collaborate with lots of people. So we help people who maybe have ideas, but maybe they're not technologists themselves. We help them to make things a reality. And we do that with all kinds of different partners and sometimes communities. So, for instance, we've worked with groups of people to help them make a game they wanted to make. And then we also work with a lot of museums, galleries, dancers, artists, all kinds of people. And the last thing we do is we directly give people tools to be able to make their own experiences. And we do this through schools. And we also run a boot camp, which is absolutely free, 12 weeks for artists and creatives to learn interactive tools themselves. And I'll be talking about that a little bit later. So these are some of the people that we've worked with. And all of these people, whether they're local or whether they're national, have come to us maybe with a challenge and the challenge was never tech, the challenge has always been maybe reaching audiences in new ways or being able to get to people that they wouldn't have been able to get to before, to explain things better. And so we really enjoy our work through the studio side of our business of BOM, but we also have a whole team that does all our learning work. And I'm just going to play a video which shows you a little bit of what we do, which is a bit easier than me trying to explain it. Can everybody see okay? Yeah. Can you hear sound or no? So just showing you some of the work here. So this is some work we've done in museums, lots of workshops with people as well. And this is our virtual production studio, which we work with a lot of different people. Sometimes they want to capture movement. And this is something I'll be talking about a little bit later. And also working with lots of people to help them navigate things that they need to do. So audiences that wouldn't necessarily be come from technology or necessarily be that well versed in it as well. Okay, so that's a little bit about what we do. Let me just move along. Oh, it keeps playing this. So as well as that, we've worked with hundreds of artists and creatives, and this is a shot of our showcase. So we run as I said, a 12-week boot camp, and this is some of the work of those graduates. And it's really incredible how much people learn in that time. But the thing we're most proud of really is that, sometimes people have a lot to say or a lot to do, and they might want to build a world about an experience they had. So for instance, we've had people on there who are neurodivergent and they built a school. They used to be a teacher and they were able to really bring people into that school and show all the different ways that it's like to live that experience. We've had people create animations of their experiences as well. So we're really proud of all of the people and what they've gone on to do. A lot of them have won awards and funding and been able to use these tools to create work that they might not have been able to access before. So why now? So there's a few reasons that maybe you may or may not be interested in tech or innovation. But there are some sort of trends on the way and things happening, and it's good to be aware of them. And I'm just going to talk about a few of these. So definitely government and policy is really recognizing culture in a new way. So the creative industries sector plan has recognized culture for the first time. as an economic driver and not just about sort of preserving history or something that's a nice to have, but is really right up there with the creative industries. And the way that they're viewing it is that it's all about collaboration. So we're seeing a lot of things happen that probably wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. We've seen games companies work with theatre companies, all kinds of merging and collaboration. And we aren't really siloed things anymore. And so, especially for small, artists or cultural organizations, we don't always have all the answers. But really, the recommendations of a lot of this stuff is to collaborate more, and how can we enable really that collaboration? And the Arts Council as well have recognised digital arts as an art form in its own right for the first time, and they'll be following up with um, a portfolio for that as well. So that's really exciting, and it really sort of cements technology, not so much technology, but interaction and culture, um, as serious things that are happening and that people are using. So one big reason that one thing that's really changed is audiences. So anyone under 30 who's Gen Z are digital natives. So, they've grown up with interaction, and we're seeing really huge changes across the board, not just in culture, but everywhere, about how that generation does things. And they really don't do passive experiences or passive TV or films. They really want to be part of it. They want to have agency, and um, they also want to be able to have a personalized experience. And so a lot of people are sort of grappling with this. And this doesn't necessarily mean it has to be technology. It just means that it really needs to be interactive for them to engage. And obviously that generation's really growing as well. And so we're seeing this sort of reflected in a lot of different ways as well. And they also see sort of digital experiences as social things. So whether they're gamers, they're not always playing games. Sometimes it's about really hanging out and finding people, and that space being for them to do that interaction together. And as well, we're seeing with millennials who are a little bit older, spending habits have really changed. So, maybe 40 years ago, people would have wanted to buy a car or a house or spend on products or things. And now we're seeing quite a lot more spend on experiences. And this is really across the board. We're seeing it everywhere, from advertising, theatre, everywhere, really. People really want to invest in things that are what life's about. So it could be wellness, or it could be just time with people you love, and that being really precious, and people being really willing to invest in that over necessarily, an object or a piece of music. That they want to go and experience that music and be in that music rather than buying a product. And those things are really priceless. And I think that's where culture has a lot to bring to the table as well. So, how many of you, did any of you get to see this at the Hippodrome, Van Gogh Live? Anyone go? Yeah. This is a really good example of that kind of experience where, technologically, it's really quite simple. It's, animated projections, um, but it's that immersion, isn't it? And I went myself, and it was a really nice thing to do with friends, and just to be in that space and not necessarily be talking all the time, but be able to move around and have, the best part of an hour there, to do something that was mindful, but together and cultural. And so this has really sort of cemented that there is a market for this, and it's sort of ignited people's interest in immersive experiences, and that there is an audience for that. Has anybody seen this? So this is In Search of Repetitive Beats. And this is a guy called Darren Emerson, who's been working in VR for a long time. And it's a touring VR experience which takes you through the rave scene, basically. So I was a little bit young to be bang in the middle of the rave scene when it was like radio stations and fields and everything. And I went to see this with some friends who were all ravers, and it was absolutely incredible because they had a lot of history packed in there about what was happening at the time, and they really took a lot of that history and embedded it in the experience. So you were listening to voices on the radio or news reports or newspapers and things like that. And it takes you all the way through to that euphoria of being in a crowd dancing. And I really got it, I really got it and what it was like. So it really is it's been a really successful experience. It's a Midland story. It comes out of Coventry. And it's a really good example as well of not just kind of showing a film about that time or about that history, but really taking people there so that they have that first-hand experience. And that's something that VR is really good at doing. And this is some work we've done. So at the end of last year, we were approached by the Symphony Orchestra, and they were doing an opera which was about a Crimean family, and it was full of drama. It was about real figures, and they wanted to create something visual to sort of engage a little bit more. And so we looked at the idea of overlaying the real photographs, real faces of the people with the performers. And so we experimented with some AI tools to be able to do this. And I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So I'm just going to play this. So this has moved on even since then, so much. But what you can see here is on the left, we've got the singer, and this is the photo of the person, and it's mapping that face onto the singer's face in real time. And there's a lot of kind of glitchiness in there as well, which is kind of part of it, really. We kind of like the changing nature of it as well. So, and there's a lot of really, really simple technologies which a lot of people are starting to use. We're starting to see these kind of things, this mapping in a lot of music performance, and to a certain extent in some museums and galleries and things as well. But it's definitely something we'd like to work on a little bit more, especially as it keeps moving along. And now for something completely different. So Birmingham has this incredible music heritage and music scene, but not everybody knows that necessarily. So sometimes people visiting the city don't necessarily know all about that. So BOM worked with the Birmingham Music Archive, who had a huge body of work around different artists and places and stories. Um, and we helped them create this augmented reality app, which is free to download on your phone. And you can walk around Birmingham and visit places like the Rum Runner, like the Odeon, which we see here, which have some real stories behind them of what happened there. And it's like having a virtual tour guide. So Jez Collins, who runs the archive, he pops up as a video character and talks you through things. And so we're seeing a lot of things like this as well, these kind of trails that are place-based, where you can locate stories or images or video. And at the moment, it's, very phone-based. But I think as devices change, we will start to see more of that maybe in audio or in glasses. And this is some work from one of our boot campers who graduated this year, and she was a specialist Tudor musician, so classically trained, and she was really interested in what kind of worlds she could create. So obviously she would love to be able to, she uses like Tudor instruments and recreates with her ensemble lots of different ways the music would have been told. And so with these technologies, with Unreal Engine, she was able to sort of rebuild some instruments and to explore the sound, to put herself in things as a performer. And this is using some motion capture in our studio and create the world really that these came from as well. And she's really, really incredible. She really took to it as well. And I suppose for her, the incentives were that by doing this, she could create new audiences so that weren't just based here, but online, so she could reach more people. Um, and also, you know, create, so I suppose, a different interest level for the things that she did and see as a creative person what she could do with some of these technologies. So Ruth's a great example of where we can take stuff, doing some dance there. So what do we see happening next? Um, so there's a few different sort of trends or things we see happening, especially with the explosion of AI. We've worked a lot in immersive technologies and we've seen so many things change. Um, and we're seeing some shifts that are really key that I think are going to be relevant to everyone. So one is something we're seeing a lot at the moment, especially for any of you who have that public-facing element. We're seeing it a lot in museums and galleries. Because it's quite simple to do, really. Having a character, whether it's a historical character or a tour guide, be able to know where you are, know what room you're in, know what context you're in, and be able to talk to you about anything really. So, I mean, we're using sort of these LLMs now, and a lot of these public-facing places or place-based places are using them to do that conversation, to help with accessibility, to help them find what they're looking for, whether it's archives or bits of places. Um, and so that's something that I think, whether it's on phones or in place, we're going to see become quite popular. I'm not sure if it's also going to become really saturated and we'll all get really sick of it. I think that's also a possibility. But it is also, I suppose, happening so much because people don't have as much funding and they're using this to fill in where they don't always have staffing as well, which isn't always a great thing. But anyway, um, so I don't know if any of you have seen this film, which is called Her by Spike Jonze, which apparently Sam Altman, who runs OpenAI, is really obsessed by. But we're about to see sort of a wave of AI devices. So we know that lots of people are using Claude and ChatGPT and all these things to talk into their phones or to type in for all kinds of daily advice. And on the right here, we've got this pendant from OpenAI, which they're working on with the guy who designed the iPhone, Johnny Ives. And down here, we have some Apple glasses, which are going to be AI enabled as well. And they're not necessarily visual devices. They're not going to have any overlay, but they will be seen as sort of your ultimate assistant. And so how culture uses this could be really interesting. And I don't know yet how people are going to use these to engage people, to tell stories, to drop things in places. And there's lots of good and bad things about these, obviously. But it'll be really interesting how people take them on. But one thing that's definitely a good thing, I think, is the fact that we're seeing a huge rise in social experiences. And what I mean by that really is that people really want to be together in space, and not necessarily always technology either, but people are really willing to spend, they really want to go, um, and they want an experience. They want something they've never had before. So whether that's in music, you've got Max Cooper here, who's an electronic artist. He's put a lot of money into a really immersive show. ABBA, which I don't know if any of you have seen, which a lot of people said, oh, no one's ever going to go and see that because, they're not actually there, but it's been proved to be really successful. Um, and also there's a real need for this kind of wellness or well-being, of being together as well. And on the left, you've got something called Soul Paint, by a really talented technologist artist called Sarah. And we're actually got something happening at BOM very soon on that. So do keep an eye on our socials for details on that one. So yes, and just some broader trends that we see happening. So just a few minutes left. I'm just going to finish up quickly. So just a couple of opportunities for you. So we do have a new bootcamp coming up in September, which is different to the other ones we've done. It's all about live experiences and the kind of technologies that you can use to create immersive live experiences. So we'll be giving a real rundown of interactive things like Unreal Engine, but also things like projecting, sound, motion capture. And who is it for? It's really for people ideally who have the means to develop a prototype so that when you come on this, it's 12 weeks long, you'll be able to actually build something and take it out there to audiences. So any info on that, I will pop something in the chat so you can take a good look at it. But I imagine all of you know lots of people who would be interested. We also have some bite-sized workshops, some half-day workshops coming up in September, October. And we ran these a few months ago and they went really, really well. We had about 45 different people who came along. So again, if you don't necessarily have 12 weeks, but you want to find out a little bit more, keep an eye on these. And just a little bit on funding. I'm sure you've all heard of Create Tech Frontiers, but if you haven't, this is such a good opportunity for anyone based in the West Midlands. And it is run by the Create Tech Frontiers programme. And we also have the Space who have funding. It's not open at the moment. And something that we will see coming out very soon is LIPF, which is not 500 million, unfortunately, for any one person. That's the national figure. But we will see some funding, hopefully, for creative organisations. And then just nationally, I'm sure you're all aware of all of these already, but just two I'm going to put on your radar. One is BFI, for the first time, have recognised immersive. So they've always been very film people. And for the first time, they've actually put some money towards immersive screen fund and a doc society screen fund. So any of you interested, whether you're working in AR, VR, any of that stuff, or interested in doing so, and also some of their smaller grants, I think it's up to 15k, will fund projects that are immersive. And then just CoStar. So the CoStar program, if you have a look, I'll also put a link in the chat, has up to £50,000 for something called intelligent venues. Oops, go back there. Oops, it's gone crazy. It's telling me to hurry up. Yes, so it's called Intelligent Venues and it's about creating experiences, shows, performances that respond to the audience in real time. So that's also worth a look if that's what you're doing and what you're into as well. So ultimately, I hope that was useful. I think technology for technology's sake is not worth doing, but it's definitely worth thinking about what's available and dipping your toe in and seeing how it's being done well. Of course, there's lots of things that are not always done well, but they can be really good tools to tell stories. And something that we're really passionate about is making that, less jargony, less, gated for certain people, and making it available to everyone. So that is me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Caroline. It's really, really interesting. Really, really appreciate that. Have people got questions? I'm sure there are plenty and many. Also, we have got Sophia, who is from Createch Frontiers, on the call. So I'm sure that if there is anything that anybody wants to ask on that one, that would be also okay. Chris is here from the Combined Authority as well, or not that I've prepped anybody for that. And the space is here as well in the call, which is fantastic to see. So if there are any questions, we can ask Caroline, but then also people can also drop in as well. So any questions? Oh, everyone's very quiet.
Just on the 12-week boot camp, Caroline, what ages are they usually there from?
So I think we've got Winnie on the call here somewhere. It's for adults, so really it's 18 plus. And probably people with a little bit of experience behind them, because just so that they're going to get a little bit more out of them. So not necessarily any experience with tech, but just experience of a practice. So whether they're an artist or a performer, they're going to have more really to bring to the table if they do. Winnie, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say it's 19 plus. And ideally someone, with that performance background, or a producer, someone who worked in that field or has familiarity with that field. But in terms of, they don't have to have experience with coding. We'll teach Unreal Engine, Touch Designer from scratch. So should be quite accessible in that sense.
Fantastic. Any more questions? I'm sure there is. Oh, Mia.
Yeah, just on the boot camp. So, is there a charge for it? Do they attend for the 12 weeks in person? Just to get a bit of background information, really, for people, artists that I know, dancers that I know that are really interested in moving their dance to another level, another stage.
So no, there's no charge. It's all completely funded by WMCA. So please ask them to take a look. I've put the link in the chat, so all they can go on there and apply and have a look. And ideally, we say if you've got the means to take a prototype through, so that sometimes it's people who have a little bit of funding or they have a project in mind. Does that cover it, Winnie? Is there anything else?
Yeah, and it is in person. So it's 2 sessions every week for 12 weeks with optional drop-ins as well to sort of support the learning.
And also we support 3 months afterwards as well, because we know it's really intense and people are packing in a lot. So we always offer that sort of help afterwards as well, and mentoring, so that they have that extra time to sort of reflect and take things out there.
Do you support them? So when they've worked through this, do you offer any support in terms of helping them with any continued funding, and that side of things? Because they might get to a certain point, and I can imagine with technology, it can get bigger or more expensive than what they thought about, because you don't know until you've done it, and then they might need more funding to take that project on, or to tour that project.
Yeah, so through the mentoring, we'll definitely signpost to funding. On that Createch Frontiers workshop as well, one of them is just about funding. So we'll run two workshops on that. We'll run the same one twice. So anyone who wants to know about what's out there and how they can put a bit together can come along to that as well. So that's like a 2.5 hours session on it as well. People are really welcome to come to both. Um, it's not in our aim as well either to make people amass really expensive technologies. In fact, most of the tech that we use is free. So Blender, Unreal, they can download it for free. We do have really high spec equipment they sometimes need to run it on, but often it isn't necessarily expensive in itself. And we're seeing so many tools now, especially the AI tools, which make it really, really easy to do stuff without it costing the earth. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, we do. We do help with some of that.
Thanks.
Mav.
Hi, thank you very much, Caroline, for a really great sort of introduction. I haven't really got a question. It's just where I am at the moment, dealing sort of with education and new technology. We kind of see it as a challenge. It is phenomenal where AI is for visual artists at the moment. But on the sort of flip side of that, we're seeing the expanse of what AI can do and the impact on where our graduates would normally go into sort of design companies, entry level type of work. So we are sort of really trying to consider how we can up the game for our students. We know AI's here, we use AI as an educational tool, but it's just finding ways and means of enabling our students to to somehow provide the analog antidote in some cases to the technology. I'm mindful of the recent Starbucks campaign that went a little bit wrong. Starbucks Korea used AI in their latest campaign, and that went horrifically wrong. So I know there's an answer in there somewhere in terms of the human, but it's just trying to find ways in which our students can not compete but present themselves in a different way, so upping the game in a different sort of lateral, sideways, diagonal ways way. So it's not really a question. It's just the things that are on my mind at the moment. So
it's really interesting you say, you're continuing the analog methods. And I do think as well, there are certain industries really embracing AI, and that is, advertising industries. Not so much film and TV because it's not really great at long form stuff yet.
mhm.
But I do think there's already like a look emerging that
Yes.
looks very generated. And I do think at some point there'll be some kind of backlash against that and a real desire for the human
Mhm.
connection. Same
Mhm.
thing in music. So absolutely, for getting stuff out there, middle of the road, okay stuff, but for truly creative work, I think that analog process, the reason your students go and study with you is they want to make and learn and be creative.
Mhm.
And that's
Mhm.
the whole point. And I think that's, not going to go anywhere. And I think as humans, like if I look at a fake piece of wood furniture, I know it's a fake piece of wood furniture. Like there's something in my mind that knows what's real. And I think that we seek that really. So
Mhm.
yeah, it can be a bit scary. And we are seeing job knock on and opportunity knock on. I'm not going to deny that.
Mhm.
But I guess, we saw this with a lot of crafts, a lot of craft courses that were cut maybe 20 years ago. And then there was this huge desire. What we're seeing now with that Gen Z, they all want to make stuff. They want to make books. They want to make furniture. They want to make clothes. They want to make things. And everybody's cut these courses. So yeah, I think you just got to keep doing what you're good at. And sure, the tools are there and people are going to play with them. But yeah, I know it is a weird time, isn't it?
Thank
Do you
you.
it's one of those really interesting spaces, because actually a lot of the research that we've done from that we saw from Ipsos, actually there is a real sense of nostalgia and going back. I mean, I'm of the age where I still do remember tapes and winding tapes and recording things and all the rest of it. And actually that kind of the new generation is really still physically wanting to have some of those experiences. But I suppose this is about how do you enhance, create, engage by mixing and modeling those different technologies and creating the range of different experiences for people to engage with, isn't it, in that innovation space. So I've got one question, and I feel like a few people have come up on the call, but I don't know if there might be a couple of people who can answer this. Obviously, we've got a lot of cultural organisations on the call, and you talked a lot about collaboration. And I was just wondering, where do cultural organisations or individuals who might be interested in this find people to collaborate with? Obviously, you've got BOM, but are there other networks or other opportunities and spaces for people to find those collaborators and immersive tech sort of creators?
Yeah, definitely. So there's the Immersive Experience Network, who are great, who started in Nottingham. They are more for anyone in that kind of performing audience space, I guess, but they created a network for people that were ignored everywhere else. So it's everyone from like theme parks, punch drunks, the work. So they do huddles, which are really, really interesting. And what else would I suggest? There's definitely like interactive, you know, people. It's funny, that kind of Venn diagram of people who do technology, because they're often in between. Sometimes they come from games, or sometimes they're theatre people, sometimes whatever. So where to find them? I mean, there is the Immersive UK Tech Network, but I haven't seen them be too active recently. Um, the Space, who are on the call, are brilliant people as well. Um, but really, there are quite a lot of meetups and networks. So the Overlap, the animation network in Birmingham, are brilliant. If there's anything on that side, more film based, but Real Brum are a really interesting group of people as well. So there's quite a lot of really good meetups you can go along to. Winnie, is there any you can think of as well, if people are interested in meeting sort of technologists or technology people to make with?
I think places like Creative Boom meetups, they are a bit more design led, but there's definitely all sorts of different types of creatives in those spaces. You will get filmmakers, graphic designers, animators going along to those, and project managers, that kind of thing. So that's one I think is on my radar. Um,
And
yeah.
then there's a lot of, obviously you've got all the Leamington Games stuff as well, and they tend to be very, self-contained. But you do get some they have lots of meetups as well, and it's worth going along because there are people who are really interested in cultural stuff and dabbling. And because there are a lot of people with more time on their hands there as well, I think there's more of an interest in collaborative bids or doing cool projects together. So it's worth checking out some of their meetups. Does that answer your question? Is that?
Yeah, well, sorry, I'm on mute because I've got the noise in the background, so I'm muting myself. But yes, in fact, actually, Sophia's just put in the chat, there's a Createch Frontier Showcase on the 16th of July at 4 o'clock. So that's another opportunity. Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything from the combined authority perspective.
Yeah, so I was just typing this into the chat. So there is going to be, over the next 3 years, a steady stream of events which will be mostly around tech and immersive technology and other areas around Createch. Obviously, the one that springs to the top of my mind will be Birmingham Tech Week, which is in October. We are hoping to do another creative industries day of that week, but that is still to be in discussion. But that would be a very good time to kind of connect with all the companies in this space as well.
And also do follow us on that one, because last year we ran Creative Frontiers and not Creative Frontiers, Frontiers Day, which was a full creative day. So it was a conference and expo. And this year we're hoping to do something similar. So just keep an eye on our socials or our newsletter as well. So yeah.
Got any other questions or comments? Anything you want to add? Chris, I don't know if there's anything that's coming up combined authority that you want to raise apart from the Birmingham Tech Week.
Um, there will be. I don't know if I can say yet, but that basically follow our newsletter, and you should have so a lot of opportunities coming up. A lot of stuff to do with our skills team are also very interested in the space, so they should be able to help.
Nick, you've come off mute. Does that mean you want to say something?
Yes, just very briefly, Caroline, I was just interested in what you were saying about the engagement with the heritage sector, and particularly perhaps cultural capital venues and projects. We've obviously in Hereford, we've got a very major one in progress, which is a new museum and art gallery, so when you were talking, you were suggesting that the one example you gave was maybe was time limited. People might get tired of that sort of use of animated, an animation on screen. You see other opportunities within the heritage sector, perhaps bleeding into education, and linking up, historic and heritage issues with contemporary issues as well, using this technology.
So I think it's really about, and it doesn't even have to be technology, but how can you make it playable and make it interactive? So, there have been a lot of like museums have obviously doing this for years, having interactives on screen of yes, no, or push the button or something. But how can you so, for instance, we did a lot of work on imagining objects that had been lost, so doing 3D models of them and things like that. But I think there's almost another stage now where people want to be able to see themselves wearing clothes of that time. Even things like going where audiences are. So if it's TikTok or Snapchat or something like that, how can you create filters that they can wear that and play that? Or if it's the music of the time, maybe they can learn how to play something. So, for instance, I've seen things that were like virtual piano lessons of a harpsichord or something. But it doesn't have to cost a lot as well. And I think it's good to be as nimble and as agile as you can. So if it's in-house, that's harder to do. But I think there is so much time on screen now that there's a lot you can do with social media or those areas, which is really quick, really agile. So, things like I remember there was something of the Titanic years ago, and they did it like updates that were released as the Titanic thing was sinking, but it did it through the form of Twitter, and that's really old now.
Okay,
But, taking historical events and putting them in our time as well. So yeah, there's lots of really clever things you can do.
I mean, in part, obviously, I'm interested in, the fact that Arts Council and Heritage Lottery are looking to work more closely together, and the opportunities of bringing, creative and then that more traditional approach to heritage together through the digital space. I think is quite interesting. Obviously, welcome the digital arts inclusion of the core areas of Arts Council's interest as well. But I welcome any standout examples particularly from the heritage or archival and art heritage sector. That would, I think, be a really interesting and I suspect quite a growing area of interest. It's quite challenging for a rather more traditional heritage sector, but interesting how that plays out.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some stuff. I know Hampton Court were looking to do a full dome. So like where you have a big pop-up tent and you have like a big film happening about their kitchens, and then taking kids into the kitchens to be able to cook and things and make things and how they were doing that. But yeah, but like I said, it can be just there's a really, this isn't so much heritage, but there's a Shakespeare experience they took into Grand Theft Auto, the game, and they replayed Shakespeare in that game. So you're kind of going where the audience is if it's not place-based. So I think that's really interesting as well. But I'll have a think for you, Nick, as well. I'm sure there's loads more examples.
No, that'd be great. No, it's very good. Thank you.
I think we've got time for one more question, Sophia.
Yeah, my thing was also about how creative industries or artists, etc., are embracing AI, because I think there's still a lot of nervousness around that, be it around intellectual property concerns, and it's just interesting to see how that plays out as government, decides on who owns what through these platforms going forward. But it's I think some people are still very nervous around the AI side of things.
Yeah, and well founded, but I think there's ways you can use AI where it's a closed system. So if you use something called RAG, which is where it just uses certain data. So say, for instance, it was a heritage piece or it was the works of Shakespeare, you can feed that in. And so I've seen some really nice examples of being able to speak to a tree and having the audio, but having the conversation elements of AI and the trees, the trees telling you the history of when it's there. Or people have used it a lot as well. I think Marshmallow Laserface used it a lot, and we're seeing a lot in visually sort of. There's an artist called Rachel McLean. She recently did something that was completely AI generated that she never would have been able to do before. But where they got those animation styles from, it's all about that, really, about what data you use to put into it. So yes, it's a bit more complex to do that. Yes, it's much easier just to go on an LLM and create something, but there are ethical ways to do it. I think, the UK government is trying to think about some kind of ethical system or repository, but whether that's going to happen, I don't know. Yeah, but I wouldn't say don't use it. I think you can use it safely.
Yeah, and complements what you're doing. Yeah. Thank you.
But there are real concerns about it, like absolutely. And it's not okay, and it's not okay that people who've spent years as illustrators or visual people are seeing, the work just being used in this way. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but I think every organization probably should think about an AI policy. So the bigger organizations like BBC, etc., have all come out with one. But it's worth just having a think about where you stand on that, and yeah, and maybe if it's not a policy, at least know yourselves where you're going to use it and how. I think some nice examples.
Yeah, I think that was really helpful. I think Arts Council have got a responsible AI practical toolkit, which might be worth for people having a quick nosy. I'm going to find it and put it in the chat now. That you can sort of think about shaping for your organisation, if that's helpful. And I suppose, like with any of these things, and this is what we're trying to do, isn't it, is to get people to think about how it works within your work, effectively to bring new audiences, to innovate and create, and to drive investment and funding, but also with that balance and caveat of all of the other things about the importance of the artist and the importance of creativity and creating by humans all at the same time. Fantastic. Right. Is there any last questions before we finish for this fabulous morning? In that case, I'm just going to say a huge thank you to Caroline and the team at BOM. Thank you so much for sharing that. The recording will go up on our website for anybody who wants to take a look at it. As Chris said, sign up to all the newsletters that are in there. And, obviously Culture Central will be sharing any information and opportunities that come through as well in our newsletters. So you'll be inundated, hopefully, with all those things. We're still waiting to confirm a speaker for the next crew session, unfortunately. So I will let you know when that is, and it will be out in the next newsletter. But absolutely fantastic to see you all. For those of you who are members, of Culture Central. And don't forget, we have our 10th year. It's not a celebration, but understanding the impact of Culture Central on the 1st of July, which will be a lovely opportunity to meet, chat, have a bit of a barbecue. Hopefully the weather will be nice and we'll have an outdoor space. But also, just hear about kind of the work and what the plans are going forward, which we'll hope to feed into and build on some of the advocacy conversations that we had after Murmuration as well. So fantastic to see you all. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you very soon.